You are listening to the Spactastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Line's second novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Without Clearance. Colonel Jessa Masters, a fearless and seasoned federal agent for the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, IIB, commands the SpaceVessel Liberty with unparalleled precision. Alongside her partner and husband, Nate Masters, a skilled investigator with a sharp intellect, she has faced some of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. But nothing could prepare them for their next mission, a personal one. When a fellow federal agent is found brutally murdered aboard the Liberty, the crime scene is not just a professional setback, it's a chilling threat that hits too close to home. As Jessa and Nate dig deeper, they uncover clues that suggest this murder is no random act of violence. It's part of a decades-old vendetta, a sinister plot aimed at dismantling Jessa's entire family. Without Clearance is a high-stakes, action-packed space thriller filled with twists, conspiracies, and a powerful tale of love and loyalty in the face of overwhelming danger. This is episode 14, The Rescue. If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
When Colin returned, I pointed to the travel tram on the blueprint. This is where we are. I traced my finger along the crawlspace that led into that travel tram from engineering, which appeared slightly above the travel tram on the blueprint. What do you say that we go from here and climb in? Yes, but we are going to need a small framed person to climb in. Too much weight may cause the travel tram to move or shift, Colin cautioned, making an emphatic gesture. I pointed to my chest. Like me? Yes, but not you. You can't, Jess, Peacock, you're. I shot him a warning look, motioning to my medal. I am doing this, and there is no talking me out of it. I put my hand on Colin's shoulder and lifted myself up. Colin stood. Then I am going with you. Okay, we will need 2 of your best explosives experts. Assemble them and meet me in engineering. I hiked up my pant leg and pulled my 9mm out of my leg holster. Holding it down at my side with the blueprints in my other hand, I proceeded down the hallway, past the crowd and headed toward engineering, which was 2 corridors over and to the left. Peacock, this is Graham. I have agents standing by. Ready, if you need them, Graham declared. Peacock, he chided, I am not comfortable with you going in alone, not in your. I am not going in alone. I will have Lancelot and 2 explosive experts, I assured the general. Lancelot? Yes. Your temporary partner. That may very well be, but Peacock, Graham let his voice trail off. I will be careful, I promised Graham. When I finally arrived at engineering, I rushed in. I glanced down at the blueprints, then up at my surroundings. Twirling around the room, I searched for the crawlspace, looking back down at the blueprints several times. I spotted it just as Colin and his uniformed men joined me. I pointed to the far end of the room and observed, it's over there. After a few minutes, the men managed to ease the cover off the crawlspace. I handed the blueprints to Colin. I'll go first. You will be behind me, telling me which way to go, I instructed Colin, then waved to the 2 officers behind him. You 2 will bring up the rear. Colin helped me up to the crawlspace. I grabbed the edges and climbed in. Crawling forward, I took deep, cleansing breaths, trying to calm myself. At least, lights lined the walls, I noted. I could see that I was in a small space, only large enough to crawl through with just enough room to move around, if I needed to. I felt the walls closing in around me. My palms now drenched in sweat. My heart pounded. Okay, take a right at the next turn, I heard Colin inform me from behind. Lancelot, I have a confession to make, I am extremely claustrophobic. What can I do to help? Colin asked. An ounce of uncertainty in his voice. Glancing back at him, I answered, just talk to me. It will take my mind off it if you talk to me. About what? Nate piped in over the communication device in my medal, remember the day we got married? No, not really, I muttered. I took a right at the turn per Colin's instructions. Then let me tell you about it, came Nate's response, undaunted by my missing memory. It was a nice, warm day, toward the end of spring. The roses were in full bloom. Everyone was in attendance, your mother, your siblings, Joey, Colin, Reggie, even the president herself. The wedding was held in the Rose Garden of the White House at President Madeleine Ashton's request. Take another right at the next corner, Colin interrupted Nate's trip down memory lane. Who walked me down the aisle? I questioned, continuing my journey toward the next turn. Please tell me it wasn't my father. No, it was Bradley Thomas, head of the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau. I was standing at the altar when you walked in on his arm. You were dressed in this lacy, white gown with a tall, Victorian collar. And I kept thinking, what did I do to deserve you? I could hear tears welling up in his throat. You, an excellent agent, a wonderful partner, and my best friend, wanted to marry me. I pinched myself so many times that my arm was black and blue. I made a sharp right at the turn. How did you propose? Which time? Make a right turn at the next turn, Colin pressed. You proposed more than once? We were having dinner, just the two of us in your quarters. I pulled out the ring, then asked you to marry me. Sometime later, we had an argument. You somehow got the notion that I only proposed to you out of an obligation to Ben to take care of you and Reggie. Needless to say, you gave the ring back. But we obviously made up, I concluded, turning right again. Go halfway down the hall. On your left should be a trapdoor leading to travel tram Charlie Fowler Green, Colin advised me. Definitely. Being shot and stabbed helps people put things into perspective. You were shot and stabbed, I inquired as I approached the halfway mark. No. You were. Maybe I am glad I can't remember that, I prodded, opening the trap door to the travel tram. Turning to Colin, I apprised him, I'll climb down. You all stay here. When I get down there, you two, motioning to the two uniformed officers, will instruct me on how to defuse the bomb. Glancing down, I noticed Nate cuffed to the travel tram railing, just as he appeared on the overseer. He looked up at me, smiling his $1,000,000 smile. For a moment, my knees weakened, and my heart raced, but I managed to start down the ladder. Keep talking. It was a long way down. I couldn't focus on what I'd find down there. I had to concentrate on releasing Nate, then we'd take it from there. When you were shot in the leg and stabbed in the hand in the process of catching Ben's killers, I thought I was going to lose you. If I did, I could never make things right. But you didn't, I reminded him, moving halfway down the ladder. I am still here, alive, and for the most part, well. Yes, that you are, he expressed. Outside of the incident with your father, our wedding went off without a hitch. But, Nate, the incident with her father was one of the highlights, Colin shouted from above. I loved when she told him, you and I may share DNA, and I might even look like you in the eyes and mouth, but you are just a sperm donor, a name to put on my birth certificate. I said that? Now that I wish I remembered. I climbed down a few more steps. That's when I heard the ticking. It was faint, but it was definitely ticking. If I could hear it, I knew that Nate could too. I couldn't imagine what must have been going through his head as he sat chained to a railing, several feet away from a ticking bomb. He probably expected it to go off at any moment, thinking that this was it, the day he dies, that he would never see his wife, sister, or children again. Before stepping off the ladder, I gazed down at Nate, then up at Colin. I took a deep breath before climbing down from the ladder and landing on the floor of the travel tram. We let out a collective sigh of relief when the travel tram didn't shift, move, or explode under my weight. But I could detect the ticking more clearly now. Rushing over to Nate, he handed me the key to the cuffs. I thrust the key into the cuffs and released his hands. The ticking became louder and louder with every second that passed. Once freed, Nate rubbed his wrists, slowly rising to his feet. He scooped me up in his arms, pulling me against his chest. As right as I felt in his arms, the constant ticking reminded me that we were still in danger. There is still the matter of the bomb, I explained as I pulled away. Following the sound of the ticking, I discovered that the source of it was in the control panel. "It's in here," I announced to everyone, looking from Nate to Colin, then to the explosive experts. "What do I do first?" I ventured. "Colonel Masters," one of the officers started, moving in front of Colin, "I am Lieutenant Davidson, and I will be guiding you through this." He had blonde hair and a face so young that he looked to only be 16 or 17, at the most. Although I knew that couldn't be the case. I nodded and returned, "Guide away, Lieutenant Davidson. First, loosen the screws and slowly lift off the face of the panel. Do you have anything to unscrew them with? Knife, fingernail file, your keys may work." I pulled the key to my handcuffs out of my pants pocket. I fitted into the groove of the bottom screw closest to the doors and turned the screw until it fell into my hand. I handed it to Nate, then proceeded to undo the other screws. After all were disengaged, I slowly lifted off the cover. With it off, the ticking intensified. Inside, I spied a silver rectangular box with a device in the middle that counted backwards. Judging from it, we had 24 hours and 30 minutes before it was set to explode. The exact time Acacia Solomos had requested to see me in the chapel. She had intended to kill him whether I showed up or not, and when I showed up, she would have killed me too. Again, loosen the screws and ease off the cover, Lieutenant Davidson interrupted the silence that rivaled that of the Liberty's morgue. "Only don't use anything but your hands. Using a metal object will cause it to." He didn't finish his thought, but we all knew what he meant. I unscrewed the one closest to the doors again, then worked my way around the box in a clockwise motion. Lifting off the face, I noticed the smaller box. These screws must be taken off in sequence, starting with the lower left one and proceeding clockwise, came Lieutenant Davidson's instructions. Then lift the lid. Taking a deep breath, I released the lower left screw, then the upper left, the upper right and the lower right. I raised the cover, revealing a device with 2 large circular screws on it. "Now what?" "Each of you grab one of the circular screws. And at the same time, turn them at the same speed." Nate seized the one next to the wall, leaving me with the one beside the doors. We twisted the screws in a synchronized manner. I pulled my screw out of its place. Wires of all different colors, red, blue, green, connected the screw to the device. Yank the blue wire. I tugged the blue wire loose. Within a second, the ticking stopped. I looked up at the ceiling and yelled, "Thank God." Glancing over at Lieutenant Davidson, I added, "Thank you too, Lieutenant Davidson." Nate and I climbed back up to where Colin and the explosive experts waited. Pointing to the 2 experts, I ordered, "Dispose of that thing." After we watched them descend down the ladder to the travel tram, I turned to Colin. "You did a great job. If I ever need your help again, I hope I can count on you." "Thank you, Jess, that means a lot coming from you." Colin put his arms around me in a bear hug. "I enjoyed it and would love to do it again from time to time, but I'd prefer to stick to my job as security chief. It's a lot less stressful, and less dangerous," he told me in a hushed tone next to my ear. Obviously not wanting anyone else to know his secret. After we separated, I nodded. "Colin, you're Lancelot. Peake's right, you did a wonderful job." "Thanks," exclaimed Nate. Colin and I shared a conspiratorial smile. "I'd do anything for a member of this family," he replied. He looked as if he might throw his arms around Nate, then changed his mind. Instead, he offered his hand to Nate, who shook it. "Anything, Nate." Nate rubbed the back of his head. "I think we should get you to the hospital," I observed, moving around him to examine the bump. "It looks pretty nasty." He was about to object when he visibly winced in pain. "All right. Let's go." With Colin reading the blueprints and instructing us once again, Nate, Colin and I maneuvered our way back toward engineering.